Google's plan to deprecate third-party cookies by Q2 2022 was delayed by almost 2 years. Google announced that last Thursday, which was June 24th, 2021. So advertisers have time to improve their first-party customer data. On Twitter, you said this is a big retreat from Google on cookie deprecation, which was invoked by pressures around threats of antitrust suits. Can you fill me and the other digital advertisers listening, what do you mean by this and what do we need to know about the antitrust suits?
Sure. There's a number of reasons why. I mean, the reality is that third-party cookies have been used for so many years that it had become pretty much the standard for advertising, targeting advertising. And so making this change, although they did give a runway for it, there's just not enough time that was given in order to create a new standard. And so the fear that was going around the industry was that the removal of third-party cookies was going to break the advertising industry online and put Google in a position, because of their exposure to the consumer, not only through Chrome, but through search and maps and all the other apps that they have, put them in a control position of all of the consumer data and blocking out everyone else from being able to have access to this data and use of it for targeting ads. So with that, I think that the pressure was on Google that they needed to just give more time for industry standards to come up, and become changed. And it takes time. Technological advancements take time. Sometimes they look like and they feel like they come overnight, but there's there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes in order to make that, especially when you're talking about new standards. And so the entire internet advertising ecosystem has to change. There are a number of proposals on the table for new standards. There are a number of companies that have come out with their own sort of identity tracking capabilities, their own IDs, whether it be Trade Desk Unified ID or Lodome's Panorama ID, LiveRamp's Ramp ID. Like, there's so many different IDs right now that companies are trying to sort of position themselves as, the next leader of tracking.
So on one hand, this is great news for advertisers who get a little more time to use third-party cookies for ad targeting. But on the other hand, the sense of urgency driven by their earlier guideline might tone down. Google's cookie removal delay is welcome, but the future is imminent. What does this mean? And how can businesses change how they're preparing, and what do digital advertisers need to do to continue to prepare for this?
I think for most businesses, not a lot changes right now, except for companies that are, in the ad tech ecosystem, the platforms that are delivering the advertising, the DSPs, the DMPs, the supply side platforms. They're all going to need to change and be able to adapt to whatever new standard is created. And a lot of them are trying to say, okay, well, this is going to be, our new method is going to be the new standard. But ultimately, it'll come down to adoption and seeing which new technologies are adopted to create the new standards. And so it's going to take time for all of that to evolve.
Definitely. It's going to be interesting to watch. But what does this mean for consumers?
I think for consumers, it's, not a lot changes. Today, the consumer is seeing, the same sort of technology being used to target ads, and not a lot has changed. Companies are trying to, again, figure out what will change. But for the consumer itself, the experience should be the same right now. I think that if the deprecation of cookies did happen on schedule, the change that the consumer would see is probably a lot of ads that were no longer really truly targeted to them. And so you go back sort of backwards, I think, in to that effect, where you start seeing just a lot of weight loss ads and mortgage ads and things like that that you may have no need for at the time, because they just have to put out sort of these generic ads. But I think that we're lucky in this fact that with this delay, that we kind of won't be forced to step backwards. I think that we can take the time that's necessary to move forward and for new technologies to be developed, new standards.
Once again, anything I didn't ask that you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I always like to sort of reiterate the importance of targeted advertising. I think that, you know, not just because I'm in the industry, but from a consumer perspective, I try to take myself out of the sort of CEO of BDEX shoes and look at this from a consumer's perspective. And if I'm just a consumer and I'm exposed to advertising, which you're going to be no matter what, you're not going to get away from it. There's always going to be advertising online, on mobile devices, and such. And so the goal for me would be to have the advertising be targeted to me in some way. You know, it's the reason why you fast forward most of the ads on TV, and reason why everybody records everything these days is because they want to fast forward through those ads because they're not targeted. TV ads historically have not been targeted very well. Technologies with CTV are allowing that to work better. But, you know, it's the same thing. Like, people don't want to be bombarded with ads that are irrelevant to them. So I think that, you know, whenever I look at it, you know, technological changes in the ad tech ecosystem, I say to myself, okay, well, you know, as long as it's, you know, moving in the direction of helping to target ads better to people, it adds value. You know, you're learning about new products and services that you may not have known about because that brand is trying to reach you, because they, you know, are learning from some information, some data, that this is a product you might be interested in, rather than just being forced to see lots of ads for McDonald's and Pepsi and Coke, you know, and cars, you know, which is what you see on TV, right? I mean, on TV, you just see a lot of car ads and, you know, stuff like that, and McDonald's and, you know, soda and beer and things like that that are just very generic. And so the ability to target ads just, you know, makes the consumer experience better, and that's the way I see it.